Thank you for watching Edupedia World videos. In this video of the marketing research process, we'll be seeing at the step 2. The second stage of marketing research is where we develop the most efficient plan for gathering the needed information and what that will cost. In the previous video, we took an example of American Airlines, how they wanted to introduce a new service into their airlines and they were not able to decide whether to give that service to economy class or business class or the premium class. Suppose American Airlines made a prior estimate that launching in-flight internet service would yield a long-term profit of $50,000. And seeing this, the manager believes that by doing so and doing a marketing research before launching this service, it will lead to an improved pricing and promotional plan, and it will ultimately lead to a long-term profit of say $90,000. These all amounts we have already discussed in the previous video. If you have not checked that video, please go and check and then come to this video. So if we calculate the effective amount, it should be around $40,000 that the manager or the researcher should make a maximum limit or a cap, that $40,000 is the maximum that they can spend. If the research cost is more than $40,000, then it will ultimately lead to losses. American Airlines is reviewing many new ideas, especially to cater to its first class passengers on very long flights. And these people are mainly business people or high profile actors and politicians who can afford high priced tickets, and they pay for most of the freight and bring maximum profit to the airlines. As we know from our two previous videos, the company is looking for options so as to introduce it in the form of a new service in the airline. First option is an internet connection primarily for email but with some limited access to web pages. Second, 24 channels of satellite cable TV. And third, a 50 CD audio system that lets each passenger create a customized in-flight playlist. And we already know calculations from the previous videos. But in this video, we need to understand about the way of collecting the data. We have split the collection of data into two parts, that is primary and secondary. And we are learning about what would be the best possible approach to collect these data. So to design a research plan, we need to make decisions about data sources, about research approaches, research instruments, sampling plan, and contact methods. We'll be seeing these in coming videos as well. So the step 2 contains of the primary data, data that is gathered for a specific purpose, secondary data, data collected for supporting or another purpose. The researcher can gather the secondary data, primary data, or both. Secondary data are data that were collected for another purpose and they are already existing somewhere in the form of records or maybe in the form of CDs, in the form of hard prints or something else. Whereas the primary data is the data that is freshly gathered for a specific purpose or for a specific research project. You collect the data, data brings the knowledge, and the action is being taken afterwards. Primary data. Again, we know that it is the data collected by investigator himself or herself, in our case by the researcher or the manager. For a specific purpose, we are looking for a service that the airline should introduce. They have zeroed in for internet service and now they are understanding what would be the cost and how they can generate revenue from this particular service of internet connection in the in-flight mode. Examples again can be data collected by a student for his or her thesis or research project. This is primary data because it is a fresh project, it is a new project. There are chances that the student will copy from already existing project, but again at the core of it there will be much of the primary data that shall be collected. Secondary data, data collected by someone else or for some other purpose but being utilized by the investigator for another purpose. Census data being used to analyze the impact of education on career choice and earning can be one of the good example. Some of the advantage of using the primary data: First is the investigator collects data specific to the problem under study, so there is no chance of deviating from the subject. There is no doubt about the quality of the data collected for the investigator because he or she is the first phase of the whole investigation, and they are at each and every point reviewing the collection of the data that they are gathering. Third, if required, it may be possible to obtain some additional data during the study period, which is, of course, we have all the internet connection facility. If we want to get a file from, say, US, we can just ask the person to upload it to a drive or, say, Dropbox, then we can easily access it. Some advantages of using secondary data: the data is already existing, so there is no hassle of data collection. It is relatively less expensive because you have to just pay an amount and then get the data. The investigator is not personally responsible for the quality of data, so there can be a disclaimer which saves you from problems that may come at your way. Now, gathering the information. Saving the cost of gathering the primary data and solving the problem with the available secondary data can be a good option. Researchers usually start their investigation by examining some of the rich variety of low cost and readily available secondary data to see whether they can partly or fully solve the problem without collecting the costly primary data. For example, auto advertisers looking to get a better return on their online car ads might take help of Google AdSense or buy copy of an auto online media study, which is a survey that gives insight into who buys specific brands and where on web advertisers can find them. Remember, we learned about oil company example where we saw how before the internet sometimes you just had to go out in the field literally and watch the competition, but now things have changed largely. When needed, data doesn't exist, or if it is dated, or if it is inaccurate, incomplete, all that can be checked through internet, all that can be checked through archives that are available on net. So if the secondary data is not available or its accuracy is in doubt, then it is a good step to collect primary data. And when you collect primary data, there is always a cost that is associated with this type of collection. Collecting the primary data. It can be through interview, observation, action research, case studies, life histories, questionnaires, ethnographic research, longitudinal studies. Researchers they need to consider the source on which to base and confirm their research and findings. They have a choice between primary data and secondary sources or use both of them, which is called triangulation. Primary data is the data collected by the researchers themselves, which may be through these steps or these particular options. It can be combination or these options can be standalone as well. Ethnographic research is usually something conducted by anthropologists and social scientists, but this type of research is increasingly attracting marketing executives because they are taking notice as well. At the core of everything they do, marketing professionals seek to understand their potential customers. Successful marketing, which is based on solid understanding of the consumers, it is the core of this particular research. Why consumers are buying their product or why they are not buying their product. Ethnographic research is also involving the investigation of a culture through an in-depth study of the members of the culture. It involves the systematic collection, description, and analysis of the data of the development of the theories of cultural behavior. Cultural behavior is another important topic that we may learn in the coming videos. A longitudinal study, the last point, is the observational research method in which data is gathered for same subjects repeatedly over a period of time. For example, growth of the child, or say growth of a particular tree in a garden. So over a repeated period of time, you are monitoring their growth. It is more of an experiment that where you are understanding how the situation is changing day by day or month by month or year by year. Longitudinal research projects can extend over years and even decades. This study type is particularly useful for evaluating the relationship between the factors that are containing risk and the development of the disease or the outcomes of the treatment over different length of time. But in our case, we are understanding about the service that can be a potential for the American Airlines. Secondary data. Secondary sources are the data that already exist. As we know, previous research, if there has been any other airline that has tried to achieve similar goals, what was their outcome and what was the price that was paid. Then comes the official statics. It is actually the understanding or the statics of people, those who are really in the need of internet service while they are in air. Then there are mass media products that will help you, like say magazines, journals, then diaries, letters. Government report is another good source of gathering the information. Web information, everything is available on internet, historical data and information, and so on. So what are the closing words for us? The advantage of primary data is that the researcher has a high level of control over what sort of data is collected, how data is collected, and for whom it is collected. The disadvantage is, of course, collecting your data can be a challenge in terms of feasibility, costs a lot of money, and takes a long time. And you may be dealing even with IRB, which stands for Institutional Review Board, which deals with approval of the research protocols. So you have to actually take approvals from these institutions or these kind of institution. The advantage of secondary data is that it can be cheaper and it can be easier to collect, and the sample size are often large. However, the social science researcher or the researchers that are based on medical studies who rely on secondary data must be aware of how the information was collected and why and from whom. In our case, we should understand how and why the information will be collected. Why people, why business class people will be interested in having the in-flight internet service, and what would be the price they would be able to bear or they would like to pay for, and why it should be only in the business class and why not in the economy class. And these are the questions that you should ask before, or the airline should ask before they launch this particular service. So the data that has to be collected for the airlines should be based on the discussed ways of gathering the information. We'll be seeing about these ways more in detail. Thank you for watching this video. I'll be meeting you in the next video.